It's been a great half a year already. You guys have heard many firsts for CII, largest membership. The next gen population has grown significantly. Just a lot of great things have happened, and a lot of the reasons they're happening now is because of the foresight and some of the vision of our CII members that have been here for quite a while. The wisdom, those things have really helped us get to the point where we are. Got through those really tough times the last few years, and we've now got a strategic plan in place. The mission this year is to execute that strategic plan. I think we're doing a very good job on that so far. For those who don't know, many of you are new, the strategic plan is really focused on continuing our current operations, continuously improving those current operations. And in addition to that, we're also focusing on maintaining our long-term relevance as an organization by focusing on globalization and diversification. So a lot of these challenges that are facing the organization today, I'll go into here just briefly, but the context we have to keep in mind is we have to keep our eye on the ball. We have to keep focused as an organization and follow the strategic plan. Very similar to what Jim Mulva mentioned for his company earlier this morning. So the main challenge for us is that in general, our organizational readiness, our capacity to do work as an industry is declining, mainly because of demographic issues. We're in a transition between the baby boomers and the mature and the next gens and those, and the organizations are struggling to be able to execute multiple projects. In the same instance, these projects are becoming more and more complex. They're getting very globally diverse. They're getting harder to do. There's more stakeholders, more demands on the projects, and both of those things coming together create a lot more risk for the projects. And a way to address that is you've got to be able to leverage your internal and your external resources. We talked about that at the orientation yesterday. If you're expecting to be able to handle all of this stuff internally inside your own company, it's going to be very, very hard to do. You need to be able to have access to external resources that you can leverage. The question is, are you going to be able to successfully execute these projects in the future? If those two trends continue, are you going to be able to do it? And that's a question we're all having to ask ourselves. I think one of the things you have to think about, and you have to address all of these, the changing workforce demographics, increasing project complexity, and being able to maintain and retain your workforce. I put one thing under each of those bullet items where CII as an organization can help us. By leveraging our working relationship as members with CII, we can apply the tools, the processes, the skills that CII has and put it into our own programs, which I believe will help do that. Demographics. The age of our workforce is changing. We're getting a smaller, less educated workforce than we had in the past. The labor pool's shrinking in many areas. The mobility of our workforce is decreasing. We talked about affluence and things like that, and people tend not to move around as much as they would in the past. Loyalty, company loyalty is not where it was in the past. And those sort of things, along with many of our experienced workforce leaving the industry, has really put us in a situation that is a challenge. It doesn't necessarily mean it's insurmountable. Here's a little bit more. This is very familiar for the members that have been here since last fall. It's a chart I like to really emphasize our demographic issue. It is focused on primarily the U.S., but in this decade, we're going to lose about 14 million people to the workforce. And that's skilled and unskilled labor. It's professionals. That's the total workforce in the U.S. If you can look at the 24 to 34 range, those are the ones coming into the workforce. There's about 3 million of them. The people leaving the workforce, 90% of them had high school diplomas or greater. this workforce coming into the work pool has about 74% high school diplomas. And so it's less educated. It's going to require more work on our part to be able to do that. Industry retention, recruitment, as I mentioned, not only are less people coming into the industry in general, but in the construction industry especially. There's fewer professionals entering our workforce, and that is a major issue. So it's a compounding of things that we are going to have to address, and that's going to require us to spend time, money, energy to go ahead and do that. One of the things we have to do is be able to communicate the value that this organization, this industry has for not just the U.S. Population civilization, but also for around the world. And CII, again, can help in this area in that part of our strategic plan and our governance, we've elevated our strategic communications standing committee, and they're an adjunct to the executive committee like the strategic planning committee is. Those are resources that you can use internally for your own member organization. It's a great place to train your own people to be able to communicate to your new workforce the value of the construction industry. Project execution. Now, you may, this statement about economies are picking up, I mean, Jim was right, and the governments do get involved. It may take a little longer, but in many areas of the world, regionally, locally, economies are picking up. We're getting active again. The change is for the positive. We may not be out of the trench that was in 2009 and 10, but things are changing. And I know for a fact our company is extremely busy right now. We're as busy as we've ever been. Capital spending is increasing. New projects, as I mentioned, are getting very, very complex, very hard to execute. AGC put out a report last December, and this is a change in the percent change in spending. Doesn't mean that they're back at the same levels they were in 2007, 2008, but we see about half of the industry sectors are now spending more than they did before, and the percentages are greater than the industry sectors that are not. Project complexity, again, I won't go through all of these. I just want to say that everything from financing to the local labor forces, everything is getting more complex. We need to have workers, we need to have teams, project teams that are savvy enough, experienced enough, have that wisdom to be able to address these kind of issues. I think if we were talking yesterday that the skills we're trading with the workforce that's leaving is a lot of it's wisdom. It's based on years of experience, and we're replacing that with a workforce that is based in skills. And somehow we've got to retrain and help that workforce, be able to address some of the things that are important and can really only be handled by somebody that's got the wisdom to do it without making very big mistakes. The opportunity, okay, this is, just with anything, the bigger the challenge, the greater the opportunities are out there. And we've talked a lot about predictability. Jim mentioned it again, and many of the breakouts talk about predictability. It's extremely important. You have to be predictable to gain trust. You gain trust, you get funds, you get to be able to, your shareholders want to drive the company, and things are good when you have predictability. The other piece that has helped us, and is something that's very key, I think, going forward, is the focus on productivity. You can see here between 2002 2007, productivity has increased. So it's continued to increase over the last 5 years, but not as much with the downturn. But especially in the U.S., we haven't had the dramatic hard landings that some of the other areas of the world have had, and that has a lot to do with our productivity is so high. And it's something we've really got to be able to continue to do in the future. You get increased productivity mainly in two ways, through quality and innovation. You know, making things better is about quality. CII can help us there. You know, we have our best practices. We have training, the project development, professional development. We have a lot of tools, et cetera, to help us make things better, be more efficient. In addition, CII also supplies us things that will help us with our innovation. You participate in the COPs, the communities of practice. You share knowledge. You have networking here, like these ideas. You may not have thought of anything. It just kind of happens, and it's something that changes the way you do things. So, you know, we have standing committees you can be on, strategic planning committee, the breakthrough strategy committees are things that we're trying to do to help push innovation in our industry. Everything requires people. I will hammer this into everybody as long as I'm chairman. To execute our strategic plan requires people. We must leverage those people, both internally in our company and externally. We have to do it through retention, recruitment, retraining. At ConocoPhillips, we've taken a lot of the CII tools. We've been participants in research. We're on standing committees. We've taken that and developed our internal processes and internal tools. We've made a commitment from our CEO on down to actually resource each of those areas, develop programs, fund them so that they're not starving, and it has paid dividends for us in our performance globally. So it's something you really have to do, and I think CII has the ability to do that. I won't go through these. Wayne's mentioned, others have mentioned the knowledge creation areas. If you are not engaged and you're just passively participating, first, you're more than likely not going to stay in CII. If you become active, you probably stay in CII, but you won't get the full value. If you are engaged and you are participating in each of these knowledge areas and members of the teams, you will get that leverage, that opportunity to drive value into your company, value into our industry. So it's going to take a lot of participation. CII is there. They can support you in any level that you want to participate in. And I want to just mention here that as a pitch, we do have opportunities for owners in particular to participate on many research teams that have started over the last couple of years, including this year. We're short owner representatives, so we really do need to try and see if we can bring people in. Each of those areas are tied to, you know, a particular part of our strategic plan. It's driving us forward, so I think that's important. Contractors, you are actually participating quite a bit. You still have some areas you could help out. Those are the particular research topics. In closing, I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that, you know, we want to celebrate our successes. We've had a great year so far, the last couple of years. We're growing. It's not unsustainable growth. I think we're managing it very well. But we want to be able to take the reach, become relevant in the long term. And to do that, we have to continue to participate in all of our areas. And again, the mission this year, execute on the strategic plan, stay disciplined, and keep driving forward. So that's what we're doing.
We begin this afternoon's plenary presentation with leading industry practices for estimating, controlling, and managing indirect construction costs. With us is Jason Klingensmith, a senior estimator at Walbridge, an ENR top 50 construction company. In his 20 years in the construction industry, he has worked as a project manager, project engineer, and estimator on a variety of projects. Currently, his responsibilities include the evaluation of owners' requirements during planning and design phases, and leading program, budgeting, and contract administration. Please welcome Jason Klingensmith.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Klingensmith from Walbridge, and I'm here representing Research Team 282 and to tell you a little bit about our findings regarding estimating, controlling, and managing of indirect construction costs. I had the privilege of working with a great group of industry professionals. As you can see, we had folks representing contractors, owners, and academia from all over the country. These are a group of extremely talented and experienced individuals from very solid CII companies. So as you can imagine, their input will be very valuable. The goal of our research team is to find the best practices to better estimate, control, and manage indirect construction costs, or as like many of us refer to them as simply indirects, or sometimes general conditions. Through our research, we developed a hands-on playbook designed to aid virtually all construction professionals in all types of industries. This playbook can be used by every project team member at all levels to assist in their developing better processes to accomplish their specific company goals. All projects have indirects. These costs often range from 10 to 40%, sometimes even higher, of total project cost. A major question that should be asked of all projects is, how well do you handle your project indirects? Are you still applying averages, percentages, or fixed costs to estimate your indirects? Are you actively controlling, forecasting, and managing your project indirects? Do you truly understand where and how all your costs are going? If not, obviously you should. Think about it. Take a $50 million project where the indirects may account for upwards of $20 million. Just a 10% savings could result in a $2 million increase to your bottom line. If that is something that might interest you, so will our team's findings. Another possible question for your team, why are you not applying the same level of effort to your indirects as you do to your direct construction costs? Many of us are guilty of focusing solely on the larger dollar direct construction costs. As a result, the smaller indirects often get lost in the daily shuffle, which can result in overruns, schedule delays, not to mention headaches and stress for contractors and owners alike. The realization of this oversight may not be evident until the later stages of the project, which make corrections even more costly and difficult. Our research helped us affirm there is no doubt that the handling of indirects is a problem that plagues our industry. Our team first started with the defining of indirect construction costs. We found many different perspectives and opinions through various literature resources, discussions within our team, and by speaking with numerous owners and contractors. As a basis of our research, we agreed on a common definition for indirects as costs which do not become a part of the final product and are not directly attributable to the completion, but are required for the orderly installation. This graph represents the cost components of a typical project. Direct construction, such as the physical materials and direct field labor. The direct non-construction costs, consisting of insurance, bonds, and possibly even a little profit for some of us poor contractors. And other owner costs like financing and land acquisition. The portion of our study was the indirect, typically including items such as job site trailers, supplies, shared equipment, etc. We removed the fixed or non-manageable components from our research. Once defined, we attempted to establish a common operational framework. The indirects were categorized into the following 4 general roll-up categories: construction equipment, project supervision, temporary construction, and temporary facilities. We then broke down into 16 subcategories as shown on this chart. Under these 16 subcategories, we analyzed roughly 500 individual cost accounts within these. After we reached a common definition and framework, we asked ourselves, and any others who would respond to our pesky surveys, what are the indirects that really matter the most? Through a series of data collection interviews, we surveyed 56 key project professionals, asking them what are the most important, the most challenging, and the most wasteful indirects. Most importantly, we were looking for the ones that were the most influential to the overall project success. It was critical for us to identify those categories that can be managed to control to have the influence on the outcome of the project, as these would be the ones of the greatest interest. The results revealed valuable information to the team and gave us direction on how to focus our research. The most important or the highest ranking categories were quickly identified, as both owners and contractors were found to be in agreement for possibly the first time ever. If you're like me and not necessarily accustomed to a spider chart, it may take you a little while to digest this graph, but you'll see the line in red is the owner's responses, and the blue line is the contractor's responses, with the highest values at the center, representing the ones with the highest rankings. These four categories, the top four categories, emerged as project management and field supervision, followed by scaffolding, then material handling, which we further defined as major construction equipment in our playbook. And then we rounded out the top four by combining several of the temporary categories, such as temporary roads, offices, and facilities, into temporary provisions. These four groups became the main focus of our research going forward. As you can see here, when asked to rank our top four categories based on the general question, what is the most important indirect cost category, or which items are the most critical to the overall project success, our top four categories accounted for more than 85% of the selected responses. When asked what is the most challenging indirects, the ones the most difficult to predict, the ones that keep you up late at night, the respondents selected scaffolding overwhelmingly by a margin of 2-to-1 over the second most selected category. And again, project personnel, temporary enclosures, and major construction equipment followed right behind. We left the definition of wasteful up to the individual respondent. It was generally related to excessive time, money, and effort spent on any one category. Scaffolding was also selected as the most wasteful. The responses to these questions helped us to spearhead our research to those categories that were able to best produce beneficial results. I think you will agree that the results depicted in our playbook will be very helpful to your project team, regardless of your individual role. By now, you're probably thinking, what are some of the leading industry practices when it comes to handling indirects? What do they look like? Another aspect of our data collection requested the physical tools, forms, and procedures that are currently being used by many of the participating CII companies. We refer to these items as artifacts. More than 100 artifacts were submitted to the academic team by various companies. Now realize some of these artifacts may not be directly applicable to your company or process. However, valuable ideas may be triggered or sparked once these practices are revealed. You can only find out about these invaluable tools if you come and hear about our soon-to-be famous document, the playbook. Here it is. These processes are all of our research have been documented in a step-by-step, very user-friendly guide that we like to call the playbook. It will enable your entire project team to use the leading practices performed by market leaders. The recommendations detailed in the playbook consist of consideration checklists, process flowcharts, representative tools, and sample artifacts. We think you'll agree that this playbook will be an invaluable resource for everyone in the construction industry, including owners, contractors, and construction managers. You'll probably want multiple copies, one for the office, one for the job site trailer, maybe one for your nightstand at home for that late night reading. The responses we heard were overwhelming. When asked, does better handling of indirects affect overall project performance? The vast majority of the interviewed industry professionals said yes, with most agreeing strongly. The importance and the need are clear. The inaugural edition of our playbook has been released on CII's website for your downloading enjoyment. So assuming everyone here wants higher profits, greater client satisfaction, and predictable schedules, and you're interested about learning of leading industry and innovative practices that can help you better manage your indirect construction cost, then our playbook is a must-read. We have a star-studded lineup awaiting you this afternoon and again tomorrow morning, so you can stay right here in the grand ballroom, reserved for the large crowds and the important presentations, for an entertaining and interactive award show presentation and the unveiling of our industry-leading practices. And as extra bonus, we will be handing out individual flash drives containing the copy of our playbook to individuals attending our implementation session. So again, I thank you, and I look forward to seeing you later in the conference.
Next, we will discuss the Experience Reference Index, the global recipe for implementation success. Our presenter is Scott Cameron, who has spent over half of his 41-year career managing capital projects for a variety of Procter & Gamble business areas. He is a recipient of P&G's highest engineering honor, the PRISM Award, which recognizes knowledgeable individuals who make sustained contributions to the company. Scott is a member of the CII Implementation Strategic Committee and a liaison with the Strategic Communications Committee. Please welcome Scott Cameron.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's 3:30 and let me thank you for allowing me to spend 10 minutes with you. I am proud to represent the Implementation Strategy Committee, or ISC. This group is energetic, it's knowledgeable, and its sole purpose is to help you. So I trust you will seek us out while you're at these presentations in order to gain from our knowledge. We are fortunate to have Bill Beck and Rick Bellato as our co-chairmen and led by Manny Garcia out of CII. So what's our mission? Why are we here? We are here for you. We're here to help you better use CII practices and procedures to help you improve your overall bottom line. Why? Because you want to do that. Day in and day out, it's about improving, to improve change, to help you meet your future goals. So how do we recognize this? Every year we're fortunate enough to award Outstanding Implementation Awards. This year, Tad Fry and Jason Crane will receive this prestigious award. We also build on their capabilities from the past to help other members join and improve their implementations in the futures. So, how did we get here? This is pretty much our January meeting. Our process starts in late fall when we start generating ideas for how could we make it to this prestigious stage. In January, we get together and we have a divergent, convergent session on what can we do to continue our reputation of being able to present to you 10 consecutive years in a row. We go through brainstorming. So like any brainstorming, you have divergence and you have convergent sessions. Well, in one of the divergent sessions, the discussion led to television, and it led to the Food Channel and the Travel Channel, and TV shows we watched. And we kind of started talking about Iron Chef and said, well, that's kind of a global. It started with Iron Chef Japan and going into Iron Chef America. We then went to Chopped, which for those of you who are not familiar with these shows, it's 4 chefs who get together from the United States and compete using a variety of ingredients to make the best meals possible. And then there was Worst Cooks in America. And that show, if you haven't watched it, really takes the worst cooks from a local area and teaches them almost how to boil water as a beginning statement. For those of you who are really familiar with these shows, then there's Hell's Kitchen, which teaches you how to use a lot of dramatic adjectives in your meetings. Now, the unfortunate thing about this discussion is I watch all these shows, so I realize I have no life outside of work. But it led to some other discussions, and so as we looked at it, it's like, well, what's in common here? Well, you've got Iron Chef, which is global in nature. You've got a regional network, which is Chopped, and then you have the local. And we said, well, you know, what do they do in all these shows? They look in the refrigerator. They go, well, what have we got to prepare today? We've got some lettuce, some fruits, some meat, some vegetables, some green stuff in the back of the refrigerator that could be edible. And we said, you know, there's a similarity here. It's kind of like they all take this stuff and they then generate something based on these ingredients to deal with a recipe for success. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. Because as we thought about it, we said, what does the recipe of success look like? Well, we have a tried and true box of CII stuff that pretty much concludes recipes for you all to use day in and day out to create and drive the success of your businesses. there's IRs, there's best practices, there's implementation assistance. And how do you use them? Well, we said, we've got all these things, and what's the difference? How do you make these? So what this year we said, what we need to do is we need to give the cooks of CII the secret ingredient. And so come with us today, and you'll learn about our secret ingredient. You'll be able to understand, or consider what you should do prior to implementation to make your recipe successful. You'll be able to evaluate how your organization stands up to others. Are you a worst cook in America, or have you proved to be the top chef? And you also learn how these considerations can modify base CII models that you may use today. We're going to talk about the secret ingredient, which is the Experience Reference Index, or ERI. And basically your need to recognize what experience means to your organization and its success. It's talking about a framework that allows you to evaluate early on in your implementation how to become more successful than you would have ever dreamed about before. And it also talks about leveraging your experience and gives you some indices that talks about how can I improve to the best. So if you look at the successful integration, you take all 6 of these ingredients, you mix them in the bowl, as shown here. And the key then, once you've got all these successful ingredients in there, is you add the secret ingredient, the ERI. So please join us today as our chefs, Christine Meriden from the Architects of the Capitol, Speedy Warner from SAIC Constructors, share their recipes for success and how their organizations have used the ERI or have wished they could use their ERI in various projects they've used to become more successful in their efforts. Our culinary expert judge today was to be Dr. Paul Chanowski from the University of Colorado, but due to a non-threatening medical emergency, he's unable to be here today. But luck has it, we have another expert. Our adaptable substitute judge we found walking through the hallways of this conference. So we're fortunate that Manny Garcia will stand in for Dr. Chanowski and talk about the ERI and how it can help you with our guest chefs. Our host for this event is Bill Beck from Worley Parsons. He will assist you in joining and learning more about ERI and how it can help you and your organizations be more successful. And thus we can take, join us in Salon A. Unfortunately, we didn't get the main stage, but we'll get over that because ours will be packed. At 4:30 today and 9:10 tomorrow, where we'll basically be able to show you how to take the culinary delights that CII has to offer you, or the mixed ingredients, and turn them into great, sumptuous meals that you can present to your company, your shareholders, and improve your bottom line results. I thank you.
Our next presentation is a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers case study on the NGA Campus East, or NCE project. With us is Mike Rogers, Chief of the Environmental Munitions and Design Center for the Baltimore District. He has served in a variety of assignments with USAID since 1988, including water resource planning, structural design, construction management, and program and project management. In 2008, he was recognized as the Program Manager of the Year. Please welcome Mike Rogers.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's nice to be here. I have to say, I'm a little hungry after that last presentation. Those are 2 hard acts to follow, but we're going to present a case study about a large project that was completed last year at Fort Belvoir, and I'm just going to spend a couple minutes right now giving you an overview of what it's about. NGA Campus East is a new 2.4 million square foot headquarters for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and it's 8,500 employees on the East Coast. NGA, you may have heard about them in the media, but I'll come back to this point, but they were an agency created in 1996 as an amalgamation of several other defense organizations. And as a result of that, prior to this project, they were located in 6 disparate sites around the National Capital Region. Pretty inefficient way to do business. So this project was authorized under the BRAC 2005 law, and it was a consolidation to one location at Fort Belvoir from those other 6 sites. But it was more than a construction project. It was really a transformational opportunity for the owner because of the disparate cultures and geographic locations they were coming from. They saw it as an opportunity for real culture change. So in essence, it was a $1.7 billion design and construction program. And for the Corps of Engineers, it was a pilot test for a new acquisition approach, at least new to us. We've referred to it as early contractor involvement. It's loosely modeled on what the private sector refers to as CM at risk. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Here you see the 6 sites they were at prior to the BRAC 2005 law. And if you can just imagine, if you were in Reston and you needed to go to the Navy Yard or to Bethesda for a meeting, a good part of your day was gone for that one meeting versus just walking down the hall. So some of the unique aspects of the project, certainly the size. It was the largest single project authorized in the 2005 Base Realignment Closure Act. And it's the largest military construction project built since the Pentagon in 1943. Given what NGA does, security was very important. 90% of the campus is secure compartmented information facility. And those of you familiar with that type of construction know there's a lot of requirements that go along with that can complicate things and make coordination a challenge. Extensive IT requirements. Their work is very IT intensive, and ultimately the IT going in the building was probably worth more than the building itself. And then because of the BRAC law, we had a very aggressive timeline. We had to be complete in September of 2011. So basically from the time the Army signed a record of decision as to where this project would be located until the construction had to be done, we had 4 years. So here's an overview of the site. It's located at what used to be called Engineer Proving Ground. It's a satellite portion of Fort Belvoir in Virginia. This overall site is about 800 acres. And as a former engineer proving ground, it had a significant amount of contamination, both chemical and ordnance, and not really much in the way of development, hardly any improvements. There was one tenant at the site, 30 or 40 people, so no real infrastructure to support this kind of development. But what we put in as part of the campus, a central utility plant, a technology or a data center, the main office building, that's about 2.1 million square feet, 8 stories, 2 towers connected by a large atrium. 5,100 space parking garage, and if you do the math, you kind of scratch your head. 5,100 spaces for 8,500 employees doesn't work too well, but that's the nature of NCPC in the DC area. Visitor control center, remote inspection facility for deliveries before they approach the main campus. And then separately, the Army funded an emergency services center that's combined fire and military police. And they've also funded a child development center, which is currently under construction, and then various infrastructure projects to support the campus. So that was the development that we were managing. Given the timeline, the phasing of the work was really a lot of overlap, as you can see here. Security accreditation was required before any of the IT installation could begin. And obviously the IT had to start before the user could come in and check out everything. Throughout all of this, it was essential that NGA maintain their 24/7 mission. Their plan was to deploy groups of between 50 and 500 people into the building every weekend for 39 weeks. And that started while construction was still going on. So lots of challenges associated with that. We'll touch on that too. So this is kind of a snapshot of the team. And it was really an incredible team. The designer of record was a joint venture between RTKL and Klingensmith. And the construction team was also a joint venture between Clark and Balfour Beatty. And you'll hear a little bit about some of the other contractors you see there too. Parsons was the building operator when it was all done. SRA was the deployment contractor. General Dynamics did all the information technology. And SPAWAR, which is a Navy agency, managed some of the site security and security management system within the building. We referred to this group as the one team, and it was really a culture that we tried to instill from the beginning, and I have to say it was very successful. I mean, we really developed a cohesive team that had a unified set of goals that we worked towards. So how did we do it? That's really the focus of what our presentation is about, and in looking at some of CII best practices, we really found a pretty good correlation between some of our implementation strategies and what CII's best practices are, and we'll talk about that in the session. In terms of results, the construction was completed 6 months ahead of schedule, on budget. Agency was able to maintain their mission throughout the deployment. And if you think back to the deployment was started in January of 2011 and finished in September of 2011. If you think back to what was going on in the world in that period of time that NGA was supporting, it's really pretty incredible they were able to keep all that going while moving their people into a construction site. And in terms of external recognition, recently we were awarded the AGC's Marvin Black Award for partnering, as well as the Build America Award. So we're starting to see some recognition, which is great. Just a couple of photos to give you a sense of it. This is a view from the north. Looking at that glass wall is the north end of the atrium, and then you can see the two office towers. On the right side of the photo in the distance is the data center, and just on the edge of the left you can see the parking garage. This is a view inside the atrium. And every time I look at this photo, I think that's a rendering or a cartoon, but that's actually a photograph. It's an 8-story atrium. It's about 2.5 football fields long. Each of the towers is 900 feet long and 130 feet wide. And when Jason was giving his introduction and talking about scaffolding, I thought back to during construction, that atrium you're looking at had scaffolding all the way up 8 stories to work on that atrium roof, which is an incredible sight. So we'll be talking today at 4:30 and again tomorrow at 9:10. And the speakers I'm going to have are Tom Bukowski. He's with the NGA. He was Assistant Program Manager for Design and Construction in their Program Management Office. Keith Couch is a Senior Vice President with Clark Construction. He was Director of the joint venture and led the on-site team on what he says is one of the largest projects in Clark's 106-year history. John Robinson is Director of Klingensmith's government sector, and he was Deputy Director of the design joint venture. And Dave Thompson is with RTKL, and he was Director of the design joint venture. So I hope to see you there. Thank you very much.
Our next presentation is about building global leadership, engaging the next generation. Our speaker is Noe Hernandez-Sáenz, Manager of International Business Development, Process and Industrial for Burns and McDonnell. He is responsible for their international growth in the process and industrial markets. He has held various roles in the engineering and construction of facilities for the oil, gas, chemical, and automotive sectors. Please welcome Noe Hernandez-Sáenz.
How will I build my legacy? Is there an app for that? I don't know how to do that. That is a question that we don't really think about until we are ready to retire. It is not something easy, especially in today when everything is changing so fast. Things are so global now, everything is globally connected, everything is so different, and so there's so little time to do so many things. So how do we do this? Now let me ask you one question. Please raise your hand if someone has made a difference in your career. Please raise your hand. And keep it up there, please. Let me ask you another question. in this room, who's making a difference in someone else's career? Please raise your other hand. If you're going like this, good for you. That is the way to start building your legacy and building leadership in your company. That's great. The challenge is there's so much to do with so little time. So we want you to invest 1 hour of your time today to come to our implementation session, because we're going to help you in at least 3 ways. Number 1, we will prepare you for the future so you understand the generational changes happening in our industry. Number 2, we will save you a bunch of time by understanding how our professionals really think. You're going to learn directly from them and their mentors on what really works for them. And number 3, we will help your bottom line, because we will help you understand how to better engage us, and so we can engage you in doing things that bring value to your company using CII. So what's happening here? Why is this important for us? Because the business environment and the demographics are changing, and they're changing very fast. As we have heard from Glenn, since January of last year, and January 1st, every single day, more than 10,000 baby boomers are reaching the age of 65. I know you're doing the math, and you're right. It's more than 3.5 million people every year, and that'll be like that for the next 20 years. So what does that mean? It means that we will continue to have a challenge in recruiting and retaining, especially top quality leaders in our industry. So on top of that, we have other challenges or opportunities ahead of us. And I'm going to share with you from the very first page of the book, The DNA of Leadership, by Dr. Bill Badger, and I quote, it says, it says, considering a steady population growth of 2.5% every year, our population will double every 30 years. That means that we will have to build more things in the next 30 years than we have built in the last 2,000 years. So if we combine the population growth and the need to maintain and renovate our existing infrastructure, we can conclude that we will have to do a historically unparalleled investment in talent and human resources, and we need that right now. So what's the challenge? What is the challenge? The problem is we're not addressing the problem correctly. We're using strategies that used to work for past generations that no longer work. So our companies, we need to change the way we're doing that, and we need to start thinking in a whole new different approach. So why do we need to do this? Well, because younger employees do have different expectations. You see, I'm a Gen X, and I have to agree with what CII has found recently. And I'm going to share with you just a few of those findings. We do want to have more open access to you, senior management, but not just a presentation and checking up the box kind of thing. We want to have a conversation with you, a relationship. We also want to have more lateral movement. We want to learn from other business units so we can bring value, and yes, we want to do it faster. We want less emphasis on seniority, years of experience. We want you to look at what we can bring to the table in the forms of skills and competency. And we really like good mentoring. But again, we can tell when there's a genuine interest, and you can tell if we are interested. That's what we need, both ways. Don't wait for the other to call you. You make the call, whoever that is. So here's an interesting statistic. More than 40% of organizations in general do not have a knowledge transfer process in place. And what does that mean? Have you ever seen a knowledge transfer station, by the way? Here it is. You're going to see a live demo of this in our implementation session, so you have to come. No. Let me tell you, this reminds me of a story I can share with you to give you an idea of what knowledge transfer means to me. A couple of years ago, less than that, a department manager invited me to come to one of his meetings to mentor the young engineers. He told me that. And I'm like, I'm a young engineer myself. What do you mean? Well, so I thought. So sure enough, I showed up next week when he asked me, and part of the agenda was for me to come a little later. And I had my presentation ready, and I show up, and I open the door of this conference room, and I see all these kids. And I'm like, who are they? Well, they're all millennials. I wasn't really thinking about them. Sure enough, I have a great conversation. Do you know when I used PowerPoint? I didn't do that. Did I need it? I didn't need it. And you know who learned the most out of that exercise? I did. It was a great conversation. We did not need a presentation. That was knowledge transfer for me. It was both ways. So what can we do to build the leadership we need, especially in today's complex environment? We need to focus on engaging the next generation in the ways that we want to contribute to our industry. And believe me, we want to do that. So I'm going to give you the recipe for success on how to do it. And it's got 5 ingredients. I'll give you just the beginning because you have to come to learn the details, have to come to our implementation session to learn the details of how to do this. Number 1, embrace the generational differences. Forget perceptions and things, just embrace it. And CII has done a tremendous job so far helping us do that, starting yesterday with the Next Generation Leaders Forum. Who was able to be at that forum yesterday? Please raise your hand. Who was there? Wasn't it great? Can you please thank CII for that? I think it was a great thing. That's the way to start. Number 2, you have to engage immediately the young professionals. You don't have to wait. And for that, we're going to learn from ConocoPhillips on how they're doing it to onboard their professionals on their summit program. Number 3, you want to keep them engaged. Not just the first or couple of years, keep them engaged with good mentoring. And URS will help us learn how to do that with a very cool mentoring project they started doing using CII as a main tool. Number 4, both organizations are going to teach us how to use the 70-20-10 model to keep things the way they should be balanced. And that means 10% training, 20% mentoring and coaching, and 70% hands-on experience. And number 5 is you have to develop broad leadership, broader perspective and leadership, and there's no other place better than CII to do that. Not just the conference, but throughout the years, throughout different years, research teams, etc. So how can CII help? Here's my favorite part. We have the Next Generation Leaders Community of Practice we formed a couple years ago with one mission: to engage your next generation of leaders to become CII ambassadors. So what you don't want to have is just a small group of folks to be engaged with CII, to be in the know. You want more people to be facilitators of CII knowledge and help your implementation efforts. Instead of a small group, have more people, not just in the conference, but throughout the different activities at CII. That is our mission, and we're doing a great job. You'll learn more about this in our implementation session. So what's next? We want you to get engaged. Come to our implementation session where you will meet Steve Lasowski and Ryan Lasowski and Steve Sisloff from ConocoPhillips and their summit program. You will also hear the story from Lindsay Abel and Barry Kristen from URS on their mentoring project. This session will be facilitated by Michael Bankus from Fluor. We're going to meet today at 4:30 and tomorrow at 9:30. Our main goal is to help you prepare for the future, understanding generational changes. Number 2, we're going to help you save a bunch of time learning directly from those who know how it works. And number 3, we're going to help you with your bottom line, knowing how to better engage your young leaders in areas of value. I think the question really is, how can we afford not to know these things? I look forward to seeing you there.
Our last plenary presentation of the day is titled Construction Productivity, Faster, Smarter, Simpler. Presenting is Bill Boyd, who has 26 years of power generation experience in maintenance, operation, and construction at Southern Company. He is responsible for project management, project controls, constructability, startup and commissioning, vendor quality, construction quality, and other project support functions. Please join me in welcoming Bill Boyd.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce Research Team 252's Construction Productivity, Faster, Smarter, and Simpler Research Summary Results. Just as athletes from around the world have gathered in London this summer looking for the thrill of victory, the opportunity to break world records, and an ability to proudly represent their native countries, you and other CII members are looking for ways to improve productivity. Our research has identified methods to ensure you experience the thrill of victory and not the agony of defeat associated with craft productivity. Our first venue will be an overview of the Construction Productivity Research Program. As you can see from this chart, our research is focused on 3 areas: innovations, benchmarking and metrics, data analysis, and best productivity practices across 5 different phases of research. This year, we reported on the results of Phase 4 of our research, which includes workforce development and steel quick connection system innovations, benchmarking and metrics data analysis associated with the steel trades, and the validation of the Best Productivity Practice Implementation Index, or BPI. The objectives of our research is simple: improve direct work rates, reduce the number of work hours required to complete a unit of work, and also to reduce rework. This logo illustrates objectives and strategies associated with our research. These objects are interrelated and include activity analysis to improve direct work rates, innovations associated with the various trades, and also reduction of rework. The BPI integrates these different areas of our research together. The next venue will be an innovation on productivity improvements associated with steel quick connection systems. During this phase of our research, we identified steel quick connection systems as a method to improve productivity. The quick connection systems are biaxial and moment frame systems. These systems feature fast erection, ease of installation, limited vertical bracing. They have minimal fit-up and bolting and no-fill welding. These systems offer similar benefits we'd expect to experience from prefabrication or modernization projects. This chart illustrates the tremendous field savings associated with the quick connection systems compared with conventional erection means and methods. The projects illustrated here demonstrate an improvement in erection man hours from 40 to 70%. To learn more about the overall cost comparisons of this innovation, please join us in the implementation session. Our next venue will be about the benchmarking and metrics data analysis. And our research used steel productivity and benchmarking and metrics data analysis to determine the impact of best practices on steel productivity. Projects with the higher levels of implementation of best practices associated with materials management, constructability, front-end planning, automation, and safety demonstrate a 32 to 61% productivity improvement. During the previous phase of our research, we also compared how different practices related to productivity improvement with the different trades. During this phase of research, we continue to see the consistency of how high level of implementation of safety, material management practices are related to better productivity. We also see this level of synergy around the trades as relate to system integration, system automation, team building, front-end planning, and constructability. Our next venue will be an innovation associated with the Contractor's Workforce Development Assessment, or CWDA. One area we have not focused on during our research in the past has been human performance. Previous CII research has demonstrated, however, that well-trained workforce is a productive workforce. Our research has collaborated with NCCER and CURT to help develop the Contractor's Workforce Development Assessment, or CWDA. The basis of CWDA is craft employee training is vital to the success of any construction or maintenance program. Owners should expect well-trained craft workers with the necessary skills to perform their work. CWDA objectively quantifies what traditionally has been a subjective analysis. This chart illustrates contractors with stronger workforce development programs identified by the red bars have a better overall safety performance than the other contractors. Our next venue will be the Best Productivity Practice Implementation Index, or BIPI, and it's a metric and a method to measure the level of implementation of these productivity practices on construction projects. The idea is simple. Projects with a better BIPI score should experience better productivity. And our final venue is the RT 252 implementation session. Please join us in an implementation session to learn more about how these quick connection systems are making materials faster and easier to install. You can see how the contractor's workforce development assessment provides an innovative way to evaluate contractors' training efforts and ultimately lead to a safer, more productive project. We'll also preview the validation results of the BIPI. Our research summary is online and available for your use. And again, I thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you in the implementation session. Thanks.